Imagine if the legendary T-34, the symbol of victory, the pride of a nation, had never been born. Its project once stood on the edge of disaster. Engineers were facing interrogations, and the fate of the entire machine was decided by a woman working in a factory workshop. Not a general, not a scientist, but someone whose name would later be deliberately forgotten. Her decision broke strict orders, put dozens of lives at risk, and nearly ended in disaster. But that same decision saved the tank that would later become every enemy's worst nightmare. Why could one wrong move cost them everything? Why was their work seen as sabotage, even though it saved the entire project? And how did one secret night at a factory in Kharkov become a turning point in the history of World War II? This is not just a story about a tank, but about people who dared to outsmart the system to save their country. About those whose names never appeared on medals, yet left a mark deeper than any award. Few people know that in 1940, the fate of the T-34 truly hung by a thread. The machine that would later become a symbol of victory almost never made it to its first tests. Everything was halted by one small, seemingly insignificant part, a detail without which the tank couldn't even move. At that moment, when the project balanced between despair and failure, the decisive step was taken not by the engineers team or the military, but by a woman from the foundry. It was the late 1930s. Europe stood on the brink of another war, and the Soviet Union was rushing to arm itself. In Kharkov, work was in full swing. Under the supervision of designer Mikhail Koshkin, a new tank was being created, one that would redefine modern warfare. The T-34 was meant to combine speed, power, and reliability. Its sloped armor was a marvel of engineering for its time. But the project stalled at the final stage. The tank had no tracks. Engineer Dmitry Yavlichev was given an impossible task to produce 1,000 track links by the end of the year. To the untrained eye, a track link is just a chunk of metal, but in it lies the geometry of traction, the endurance of the entire vehicle. The order was clear and terrifying. The technology of the time made it physically impossible to deliver on schedule. Forging even a single set required weeks of work, microscopic precision, and nerves of steel. Yalinichev knew failure wasn't an option. In those years, missing a state defense order didn't just mean a reprimand. It could cost your freedom or worse. He stared at the blueprints, feeling his chest tighten. Next door, workers were assembling tractors, laughing, smoking, talking about everyday life, unaware that just a few meters away, the fate of an entire war was being decided. Traditional methods led nowhere. Producing 1,000 forged tracks on time was simply impossible. Every day brought not progress, but panic. Everyone at the plant felt it. The T-34 project was about to be shut down. And then, the unexpected solution came. Not from the main design bureau, not from Moscow, but from the neighboring foundry. Lydia Didukina, Dmitry's wife and head of the laboratory, watched her husband break himself trying to find a way out. She understood that if nothing changed, the project and many lives would be lost. So she dared to propose something no one else even whispered about. Replace forging with casting. On paper, it was madness. Casting was considered weak, brittle, suitable for simple parts, not for the components of a tank, meant to survive thousands of kilometers of combat terrain. Lydia knew that such a suggestion could destroy her career, but she also knew there was no more time left. In the lab, surrounded by roaring furnaces and glowing metal, she kept studying test results of Hadfield steel, a unique alloy that became stronger the harder it was hit. That self-hardening effect could be the answer. If they used that steel, casting tracks wouldn't just survive, they'd become tougher over time. All it required was one thing: to risk everything. To violate procedures, falsify paperwork, and register the casting order under the guise of tractor parts. Every night, Lydia and Dmitri whispered about it at home, knowing even the walls could have ears. She understood that she wasn't signing a technical document. She was signing her own fate. But the decision was made. One night, the secret operation began. Amid the roar of fans and the hiss of molten metal, they poured the first mold. One mistake in temperature or composition, and everything would be lost. The workshop fell silent. When the first cast track was pulled from the sand, no one dared to breathe. Days later, the batch was complete. 1,000 links, on time. Only a handful of people knew they were cast, not forged. Now came the true test, the test of battle. Spring 1940. 2 prototype T-34s rolled out of the Kharkov factory gates. Ahead lay the road to Moscow. Hundreds of kilometers of torture, mud, snow, ice. For the crew, it was a nightmare. At one point, a tank broke through the ice. To save it, Mikhail Koshkin himself waded into the freezing water, helping pull the machine out with cables. He caught a severe illness, but refused to stop. The tank was restarted, and it kept going. The cast tracks endured it all: impacts, frost, unimaginable loads. The tanks reached Moscow. Tests were a triumph. But with victory came danger, because the secret couldn't stay hidden forever. During the final inspection, one engineer looked closely at the running gear and suddenly said, "Wait, these tracks are cast." The words struck like a verdict. Everyone froze. Exposure meant the end. But instead of anger came astonishment. The illegal parts had survived conditions even the official design hadn't expected. Koshkin backed his team, and the cast track solution was officially approved. That risky decision didn't just save the project, it made the T-34 suitable for mass production. During the war, when every week mattered and factories were bombed, this simplicity was priceless. Casting allowed thousands of tanks to be built, fast and efficiently. Years later, as thousands of T-34s clashed with German Tigers at Kursk, Lydia Didyukina listened to the war reports and remembered those nights. The heat, the fear, the impossible choice. Every tank that rolled into battle carried a piece of that forbidden idea, the one that saved it. Dmitry Yalinichev continued his work and was eventually recognized for his contributions. Lydia was not. Her name never appeared on the lists of awards. But perhaps her greatest reward was knowing that the tanks she helped create rolled all the way to Berlin. At home, Yalinichev kept that first flawed cast track, rough, uneven, imperfect.
He called it a reminder that sometimes breaking the rules is the only way to create something truly great. History nearly forgot these people, but it was their courage, their defiance, and their quiet genius that made the T-34 what it became, a symbol of strength, resilience, and the human will to triumph under impossible pressure.